Hi, everyone. Thank you, Gary, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon for our virtual Passover cooking class. I have my sous chef here, my daughter, Sydney. I hope you're as excited as I am to get started on our delicious Seder meal. I've had my Seder table set, covered in plastic for 2 weeks now. I've been so excited. My name is Sherry Shank, and I am the president of JNF San Diego. And it means so much to me that we're all gathered here on Zoom as we prepare for an unprecedented Passover season. This year, we are modifying our ancient and beloved traditions to a new and very uncertain reality. Many of us are spending this year's Passover either alone with only our immediate household family members or on Zoom with family and friends from near and far. But let's remember that we, the Jewish people, have always overcome adversity and found creative ways to adapt to our ever-changing circumstances, and this Passover is no exception. Food is a universal unifier, and it's something we can all take part in and enjoy from the sanctuary of our homes and our kitchens. And thanks to the technology available at our fingertips, we're able to rejoice in the comfort of food and community together virtually. So I thank you for choosing to come together as a Jewish National Fund family to take part in what is sure to be a fun and informative cooking class today. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce you all to our chef and teacher for this afternoon. She is our proud San Diego Women for Israel chair, a culinary entrepreneur, a busy mother, a loving wife, and a very dear friend to so many. She's the owner of Spice and Leaf, bringing you exciting and exotic blends of spices that will elevate your everyday cooking. And I'm a huge fan of Spice and Leaf, and I buy all the products on Amazon. She's the visionary behind Spice It Up with Deb, the curated virtual cooking experience that makes it easy for you to prepare a delicious meal in real time on Zoom, like we're about to do now, and as I have done many times over the last several weeks. I'm pleased to introduce my dear friend, Debbie Kornberg.
Thank you, Sherry, so much for that beautiful introduction. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for letting me be in your kitchens with you. We are going to get started in just a minute. If you haven't got a pot of water going, I just want to make sure everybody has a pot of water to go to be able to put your whole cauliflower in. I just want to say a quick word about JNF. It's so near and dear to my heart. It's been a part of my life since I can remember from my Hebrew school days. You may see to the left of me, I literally just pulled a few things that I have visibly in my house that is connected to JNF. And I didn't realize how much I had even before I got actively involved in San Diego with our JNF chapter here. And it's just a testament to how it has played such a critical role in my life throughout the years. And we'll talk more about that. So thank you. So we are going to get cooking, people. So hopefully you have all your ingredients prepped and ready. If you don't, that's okay. We'll take it slow and we will cook as we go. So the first thing we are going to do is you want to make sure you have a pot of water boiling. And we are going to add some important ingredients to it to create a beautiful turmeric colored roasted cauliflower. So the first thing we're going to do is add 2 tablespoons of turmeric to the water. My water is already boiling. And next we're going to add enough salt as if you were adding water to a pot to make pasta. So I'm going to give in a couple of tablespoons in here. And that's going to add a nice salt flavor to the cauliflower. You won't need to add any more later on. We are going to take 4 garlic cloves and we are going to mash it with a knife. So you take the knife on the flat side and you're going to push down to flatten it so you can see. And we're going to do that a couple times. And this is going to help bring out the flavor of the garlic. And we're going to add it. I had 2 really big ones and 2 smaller ones. So I'm going to add all of these into my pot. And I'm going to stir that up and just let that sit for a minute so that everything can kind of come together. If you were normally making this, you could put in your pot of water, everything, and then bring it to a boil. But as my directions say, this is a pot you watch, and it will come to a boil. And if you're not watching it, it will make a nice big yellow mess, which is not fun cleaning up. Sometimes when I try to multitask a little bit too much, I've ended up with a mess. So we're not going to do that today. So while that's marrying together, and my husband's shaking his head like, yeah, we've been there for that one. You're going to take your cauliflower. You're going to want to leave the leaves on it. This really gives it a beautiful presentation and frames the cauliflower as the centerpiece of the dish that we're going to be making. And you want to make sure you slice off the bottom so it's flat and it rests well. Sometimes they're a little uneven, so you want to be able to do that. We are going to gently drop this into our pot of water. And you want to make sure that it is fully consumed by the water so that it all starts to turn that beautiful yellow color. I am going to turn back up the heat to a medium heat, and I'm going to cover it with the lid, but I'm going to leave it a crack open so that way it won't bubble and overflow. I'm going to set my Alexa timer in here. It might set off your Alexa timers. When I do these classes, sometimes that happens. So I'm going to say, Alexa, set timer for 10 minutes. Nothing. Alexa, set timer for 10 minutes. Okay, my timer set. If you, oh, I hear other ones in the background. That's hilarious. Okay, if I set that off, you're welcome. Or I'm sorry, depending. So we're going to let that go. And while that is cooking, we are going to start a couple of other dishes. So this is a complete dish. The whole roasted cauliflower. We're going to make a Shwarma spiced quinoa, and we're going to also add some roasted vegetables to it. So the bed that the cauliflower is going to sit on is going to be on that Shwarma spiced quinoa. So that is going to be the next thing we are going to do right now is we're going to take our pot of water for our quinoa. And you're going to want to make sure you have 2 cups of water for your quinoa, and you're going to bring that to a boil. Maybe. Let's see if we get all my burners going. Oh, that one doesn't seem to be cooperating right now, so we'll just use this back one.
It was just koshered to Passover.
Oh, my husband's reminding me that we just koshered it for Passover, so maybe the burners aren't cooperating. Not yet. Okay, we'll just do it there. I'm going to take this off for a sec. So I'll give you a minute to get your water going for the quinoa. You're going to be making 1 cup of quinoa for 2 cups of water. Nope, that's what happens when you kosher for Passover. So we'll work with that. So we're going to get that going. Make sure everybody has a chance to be able to do that. I'm going to pull out my quinoa. Okay. So 2 cups of water is for your quinoa, and you're going to use 1 cup of quinoa. If you want to wash your quinoa, you can go ahead and do that. Mine is actually done, but I want to give everybody a minute to be able to do that. So by now, you should have hopefully your pot of water for the cauliflower had boiled. You added your turmeric, 2 tablespoons, 3 to 4 garlic cloves mashed, and some salt, enough as if you were boiling water for pasta. You've dropped in your cauliflower whole, and we have that on a medium heat. The lid is covered, but we have it cracked open, and we've set the timer for 10 minutes, and we will test it with a fork to see if that's ready. Second is you have a smaller pot, 2 cups of water. We will add 1 cup of quinoa once that's boiling. And you're also going to want to have your Shwarma Spice ready to go. Okay, so Shwarma Spice, or maybe you made your own because you weren't able to get your hands on it. These are difficult times to be able to find everything we need, so we have to get creative and We've got Passover going and we have COVID-19, and so things are a little bit scarce, so we have to get creative with what we have already existing in our pantry, things that are easily accessible to us. Most people have a variety of spices in their pantry, so hopefully you were able to create your own little spice blend. If you weren't able to get the Shwarma Spice blend through Amazon, or maybe it wasn't going to get here on time, so you'll have it for the next time you want to make this dish or something else. Just to talk a little bit about Shwarma Spice and what it is as our water is boiling. It's a combination of flavors of cumin, coriander, of course turmeric, which has that beautiful yellow color, parsley, a little bit of paprika. This one happens to be salt-free, so there's no salt in it. There's some black pepper. Shwarma is often known as the rotisserie of either chicken or turkey, lamb that goes around the skewer. But what I really love to be able to show with spices is that you can use it for anything. Just because there's a rule to it does not mean you have to use it that way. And so basically what we're doing with our pot of water is we're adding a broth to it. We're creating a water broth using spices as opposed to a chicken stock or a vegetable stock, or even sometimes, you know, they have like the osam soup mixes, the chicken stock. But this is just using natural spices to do that. So you can do that with any spice blend. And in fact, I really love doing it with tea. So I'll brew different flavored infused teas, and I will cook that with rice or quinoa. And I'm actually doing that class next Friday. We're going to do a chai infused basmati rice, and it's going to go with an ahi steak. So you can take anything, brew it into a broth, use that as a water agent.
Debbie,
Okay.
we have a question from Monica Efrati. She's asking, were we supposed to put in the quinoa yet, or are we still waiting?
No, we're still waiting. In fact, my water is already boiling. So check your pot to see if it is. And I'm going to add my Shwarma Spice to the water first before I add the quinoa. And I'm just going to mix that up. And I'm going to grab a pot holder so that I can show you. I have my matzah pot holder. Pull that out so you can see there. There. Okay. So the water's in, and now I'm going to add my quinoa to this and mix that in. I'm going to put that on a nice simmer for 15 minutes. So I'm going to put that all the way down so it cooks. Make sure all that quinoa is absorbed. Going to cover it, of course. And I will set the second timer for anybody who needs it with Alexa. Alexa, set quinoa timer 15 minutes. Okay. So we've got those two items going. Yay, my burner works now. Magic. Okay, perfect. I'm just going to put that on a simmer. So,
Debbie, we have another question from Robin. She's wondering how much shawarma seasoning.
It is, I said 2 teaspoons. If you want to do 1 to 2 teaspoons, that's fine, depending on how strong of a flavor you want. Okay, so quinoa is going. We are going to now saute some onions. So we're going to have 3 things going at once. And I realize that that pot is being covered, so I'm going to move it over here carefully because it's hot and it's just metal, so that you can see me saute my onions. So I will move that here. I will turn the temperature down all the way and turn off that burner. So now I just have this burner going. I will move this over here. And we are going to start to saute onions, okay? Give everybody a chance to catch up. I am going to add some olive oil to my pan for sauteed onions, so you can do 1 to 2 tablespoons. This is going to get incorporated into the quinoa after it's cooked. So this is just part of the ingredients for building flavor, okay? So we're gonna have Keep an eye on your cauliflower. I saw mine bubbling up. That's the crack, so I can see what's happening in there before it's too late. I can't emphasize enough. Please keep an eye on your turmeric pot of water. Okay. So we have our turmeric pot of cauliflower is cooking. Quinoa is cooking for about 15 minutes. Once, if yours is done, you are just going to want to turn off the oven and we're going to let it rest for another 12 minutes. Okay, so now we've got our olive oil here. You're going to want to add your onions. It's one onion. Some of them are really big, some of them are really small onions, but you know, you can just go ahead. I have minimal kitchenware for Passover, so I either have a small pan or I have a really big one that I'll show you, because normally I'm cooking for a lot more people. So I'm going with the small pan. Those are my resources during Passover. And for those of you who may be watching and wondering why my kitchen looks a little different than it usually does, it is because during Passover I use completely different dishes, pots and pans, down to the food processor. I mentioned earlier that these black pots are very nostalgic for me. I bought them with my husband in 1992 when we first got married and started getting our house ready for Passover. And so somewhere on Broadway in 100 and something, like 103rd, we found this, you know, like 99-cent type store and got those. So your onions should be on a medium heat, medium low, and you're gonna just let those cook down. Okay, Alexa, stop timer. My timer just went off for the cauliflower, so what we are going to do is we are going to check it together, and I'm going to show you how. With a pot holder, gently lift off the lid, and you will see that it's boiling in there, and I'm going to take a fork, or a knife actually, and I'm going to turn it around so that I can see the stem of it. And I'm going to slice it, put it in there and see how easy it goes in. If it needs a little more time, it should be a little hard to put in. If your knife goes in really easily, then it's done. Mine went in fairly easily. It's a big cauliflower, so I might give it another minute or two to cook. So I'm going to give mine like another 2 minutes. If yours is done and your knife went in there super easy, what I'm going to suggest is that you grab a colander. I realized I omitted that from this list, but go ahead and take a minute and grab a colander. Once I realized I omitted it, I went to try and find it, but of course we didn't take out all of our Passover stuff because we're not having 26 people for dinner this year. We are only having 3. So we kind of picked and chose everything that we thought we'd need, but we haven't found the colander. So I'm going to do it colander free, but if yours is ready, you're going to want to go ahead and put it in your sink and lift off the pot, and we're going to gently pour it out into the colander so that the water can drain from it and just get out all that extra water from the cauliflower, because eventually what we're going to do is put it in the oven to roast. Okay, so this is step 1. Okay. So I think I talked long enough that mine's done. I just wanted to give it an extra minute or two because mine was a little bit on the big side. And P.S. I married into these gloves. Aren't they beautiful? Okay. I turned off my stove. Now this, you see I have a really big pot. David, I don't know if you can see the yellow water there. You can see how yellow it is. So when you pour this, first of all, it's boiling water. And it's yellow water. So you're going to do this really slow. I'm going to go ahead and put a bowl in there, even though it's not a colander. I'm just going to put that right there. And I'm going to start to pour it out. So give me a sec while I do that. And I'm going to just pour it really slow here to drain the water, because again, I don't have a colander. So I'm going to get out most of the water. And then I am going to pour the rest of it in here. And it plopped right in. Did you hear the plop? And now what I'm going to do is just drain out the rest of the water and gently hold that. Okay. And now I'm just going to let this sit in the sink and drain for a few minutes and cool before I do anything with it, so the water can continue just to drain out. Ideally, it's best with a colander because that way the water's not sitting in the cauliflower and continuing to cook it. I'm going to flip mine over so that it is facing this way. It's hot though. So I'm just going to let it sit for a few minutes and cool. Okay, you can check on your onions. They should be cooking nicely. Mine are cooking down. I'm going to just give those a little stir. We want to get our onions to translucent. Okay, so those are coming along. So cauliflower, if it is not out of the pot, please take a moment and check it with a knife or a fork, get to the stem, the base of it, and see how easily it goes in. Quinoa should still be cooking. Okay. And if you want to move your things out of the way so that way any leftover items you may not need right now. I'm going to just give people a few minutes to be able to do that. And what we're going to do next while this is going is we're going to make some tahini. So I just want to give everybody a minute to make sure that they're caught up with the cauliflower, because I don't want anybody to fall behind with that because you are watching the pot, and to start something else, you could get a little sidetracked. It's easier if you're doing a couple things over the stove. But I'll take this commercial break to tell you how do you clean your sink after it's filled with cauliflower. Mr. Clean is the way to go. And if you're not familiar with these, this is such a commercial. Maybe they'll make a donation to JNF. Okay. Is these little bad boys, magic erasers, are really magic. I don't know what's with them that makes them so magical, but they're literally just a foam thing and a little bit of water, and you put that in the sink and it's sparkling clean. So that is our commercial break of how do you clean your sink. Don't put it in your pot though, because I have no idea what chemicals are in here. Don't clean it with your pot. That you're going to scrub with some soap and water, and you might have a little turmeric residue in there, but better than chemicals in your body that you're ingesting. Okay, so Mr. Clean to clean your sink with the sponge. And I have not had an issue finding those in the supermarket right now. So there you go. Any questions right now before we move on?
We don't have any questions in, but as a reminder, if anyone has questions, please send them to me, Monica E, in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we are going to bring over our items to make tahini. So I'll move that back here. P.S. Have you seen my JNF box? So cute. Retro. As I was getting ready for, I'm doing a commercial note just on JNF here. So I have this fabulous book that celebrates 100 years of JNF from 1901 to 1991. And it tells you all the different JNF boxes. You can look it up and see what JNF box you may have and what year it's from, and it gives a history of it, and I love this. Before I was in cooking, I was in Jewish education, and JNF has been with me every step of the way because they provide such wonderful educational materials for students and schools and, of course, adults. So I thought I'd pull that out because I love that. All right. Maybe in a few minutes, we'll talk about some great JNF programs that are happening as we speak. Okay, so I am pulling out my food processor. So I have that here. I'm going to grab my tahini, lemon, a little bit of paprika, and garlic. And this is the time that if you have access to your hot water, you're going to want to grab that. So I am going to turn off my onions, because my onions look great. So I'm going to hold those up for you so that you can see. Okay. So I'm going to turn off mine. If yours are still cooking down, feel free. There should be a little bit of olive oil in there because you're gonna be adding that to the quinoa. It's gonna help break everything up once it's done. Quinoa still has a few minutes, so we're letting that go. So, I know there were a couple discrepancies on what I said about tahini, so I just want to make sure that we have the time to do that. So what we are going to do now is we're going to take our tahini. In the recipe, I call for tahini and star. Oh, did I not say how much tahini? Was that my mistake here? Okay, so we're going to do a half a cup of tahini to a half a cup of water, but we're going to do the water really slow, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so a half a cup of tahini. This is raw tahini. If you bought tahini that's already a dip, please don't use it. It's not going to work. You need raw tahini. That's the only ingredient it should be. Sometimes there's citric acid or salt added, but it should just be raw tahini. If you bought it pre-made in the store, you're good to go, and I'll show you the end game of how we're going to use it, okay? So I'm going to pour this in. Going to find me a spatula.
Debbie, Sonia in the chat says that the recipe says 2/3 cup tahini.
Okay, if it says 2/3 cup in the recipe, for some reason I'm not seeing that, but okay. You can go ahead and add 2/3 cup, and I will do that with you. So that was a half a cup, and I'll add another third to it. No problem. So that way we're all doing the same thing. So now you want to get from your faucet some hot water. So you can go ahead and turn on your faucet and grab some hot water there while that's
Debbie,
warming up. Yes.
Monica Efrati is wondering, how do we know if it's raw? Does naturally stone ground sesame seeds count?
Yes, naturally grown stone seed tahini is fine. It basically, you just don't want lemon already in it and other flavors and spices, because we're going to be adding the flavor and the spice to it. We just want the raw tahini. If you taste this, you dab your finger to it, it should taste like peanut butter, okay? So I'm going to add some water. I have my cup measured here, but I'm not going to use it yet, okay? So I'm going to move my tahini aside. It's in my food processor. I'm going to take my garlic, and I'm going to mince that up real quick. Okay, 1 garlic clove is all you need. Okay, so we're going to do 2/3 tahini, 1 garlic clove minced, and we're going to add all those components together, and then we're going to add some lemon and eventually the water. Okay, so this is pretty much the only solid ingredient we're adding is the garlic, and you'll see why I'm mentioning that. I'm going to cut my lemon in half, and I'm going to give that a good squeeze. Oh. My quinoa timer is done. Alexa, stop timer. So I am going to just turn off the stove. I'm not going to do anything to the quinoa. I'm just turning it off. I'm going to let it rest for 12 minutes. Alexa, set timer for 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Starting now.
Great. So I'm going to add my lemon juice. Okay. Make sure you get those seeds. Jamie Geller, a friend of JNF, taught us to squeeze it like this so that the seeds will stay on top. But you can also go like this, which is my habit. Okay, so we've got 2/3 cup tahini, a squeeze of an entire lemon in there, minced garlic. Now, the water. Everything is going to be liquid. I'm not going to add all the water at once. I'm just going to add some. And I teach this every time I make tahini to show people the process of how to make tahini differently depending on the stages. One of the things that's going to happen here is that it's going to seize up. Even though there's all liquid, when I put this together, the oils from the tahini and the water kind of come at each other until it releases when you add more water. And I will show you what I mean. Ooh, a little splasher. So it starts off liquid, And I'm going to pull this up so that you can see what I mean. Look how thick it got. Looks like hummus. This is not done. Don't eat it like this. It'll be fine, but it's not as good. Okay, I'm going to loosen that up, and we're going to add some more water to it. And push my little thing down. So we're going to add some more water. So we did 2/3 cup of tahini, so I'll make sure I have enough water to go with that. So I'm going to add just a little bit more, not the complete 2/3. And I'm going to emulsify it again and mix it up. And now you can see it's starting to turn that white color. It's less brownish and more white. And now it looks like a yummy dip that I would put into a dish with some olive oil. Normally I'd scoop that up with some pita bread. This year it might have been matzah is what I would use it for. But we're not done, because we're going to add more water to this to make this more of a sauce. So you can go ahead and add more water. Mix that up. If you want to keep it thick, you can do that too. And add water at the very end to loosen it up. So here's my tahini. And I'm going to put this into a dish that I'm going to save for tomorrow, so you can see. All right, so I'm going to take out my center divider. Okay. And I'm going to put this into a dish. Okay, nice, beautiful color. And we can add some paprika to this. You can mix it in, you can sprinkle it on top. Okay. I don't want to lose a drop of this. This is like gold in our house. We love tahini. We put it on everything. Okay. There we go. So we've got our tahini done. Put that there. So here it is. You can sprinkle a little bit of paprika on here, put a little pinch on. And we will add this at the end to the cauliflower, but it's ready to go. So I'm going to set this aside right here. I'm going to clean up my space a little bit, give you an opportunity to do that too. Next on deck, we are going to get ready to put our cauliflower in the oven, which is a really quick process. If your oven has not been set yet to 500, you do want to do that. Move this out of the way. And I had a towel. I don't know where that one went. I'm just going to wipe down my cutting board here so that way it's all clean for our next items. Okay. So now we're going to take our cauliflower and some type of baking sheet. You can use a Pyrex dish. I tend to use aluminum foil for this because it's easier. That's the honest truth. So I'm going to lift up my cauliflower and show you, look how beautiful yellow it is from the white it was. Okay, oh, it's falling a little bit. Let's see. Okay. Sometimes the shape of the base changes after you cook it. I'll turn it around so you can see there. Okay. I am going to put on gloves if you happen to have them. More people nowadays have gloves. If you want to save them for when you're out and about, I totally get it. But we are going, you could use this with a basting brush if you wanted to in a bowl. You could go that route too. So I'll show you 2 ways you can do this. It's hard to put on gloves when your hands are wet. Okay. And not rip the glove. It's a challenge. All right, I'm going to just take a little dish here. Or I'll use this one. Okay. So option 1 is you can take some olive oil and just put it in a dish. And with a basting brush, which I do believe was on your list, you can just go ahead and baste it like this. What I like to do is I'll pour it in my hand and I just give it a really good rub. Okay, so it's all coated with the olive oil. And then I can take it off and my hands are clean and there's no problem. Either way is fine, no judgment. I think when I was a kid in preschool, I was the one that always wanted to finger paint and put your hands in the paint and just get really messy. Okay, oven is preheated to 500. Once you have rubbed all this on, we are going to put this in the oven. So I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to put this in the oven so that it gets nice and toasty. And I'm going to pass this off. Cameraman / oven person, because my oven is on that side of my kitchen. Okay, so I'm going to set a timer for Alexa. Set cauliflower timer for 20 minutes. Okay, so that is going to cook for a good portion of the rest of the class, and it's going to get nice toasty brown. I did do one earlier, so I will show you what it looks like in case ours are not ready yet. Sometimes it takes longer. It has to do with the moisture that's in the cauliflower. You could let it sit and rest a little longer. If you are serving this for tomorrow, you still want to put it in the oven today so it cooks all the way through, and then you can reheat it up. So up until now, all the components that we have made together are things that you can save for tomorrow or enjoy today. There's no problem there. We're going to get to the next step of depending on what you want to do for today or tomorrow, and that has to do with our roasted vegetables. But I'm curious how much more time our quinoa has, so I'm going to ask Alexa. Alexa, how much time on quinoa timer? Oh, it's just 12 minutes. How much time on the first timer? Alexa, how much time on the first timer?
You have 2 timers. A 12-minute timer with about 3 minutes.
Okay, I have 3 minutes left on the quinoa,
With about 18 minutes left.
which is helpful to know, so that way we can start our next project and know that we're good. Which is
Debbie,
going
we
to.
have a question.
Yeah.
We're wondering what temperature should we reheat at tomorrow and for how long?
Great question. If you want to reheat your cauliflower for tomorrow, I would start it at, I would heat it up probably at 300 just to cook it. And I'll show you how to wrap it. When it's done, you're going to just cover it with plastic wrap once it's cooled and stick it in the fridge. You can save the tin that you're using right now, put it back on there and reheat it up at 300 degrees. Probably for like a good 10 minutes. You could even take your cauliflower out of the fridge like an hour or 2 beforehand. Just let it come to room temperature. Put it in at 300 so it gets nice and warm. And then the last 5 minutes, I would just blast it like at a 500 so you get that toasty brown on top again for a couple minutes. You could even do a broil if you wanted to for a couple minutes. So those are the steps. Take it out of the fridge an hour or 2 before you want to heat it up. Let it sit at room temperature, and then you'll put it in the oven at 300, 10-15 minutes, and then maybe a final charred on broil for 2 to 3 minutes at the very end, just to give it that extra toasty flavor again. Okay. So now we are going to move into our roasted vegetables. You want some type of baking sheet and parchment paper. Make sure your parchment paper is laying down. This is going to be for the vegetables. What I'm going to say to you is the following. If you want to eat your roasted vegetables fresh, I would wait to do this tomorrow, and you can just get everything prepped and ready, but don't actually put it in the oven until tomorrow. This is the one thing I would suggest. I'm going to make it just so that you can see the steps of everything, but I think these would be better if you waited till tomorrow. So that is the one thing that I would suggest to you not to make yet, and wait until tomorrow to cook these and just follow the steps accordingly. So I've got my bell peppers, baby bell peppers here, and I sliced up my zucchini that I'm going to put here and lay those out. So you can do this part now if you wanted to, and then just cover it with some plastic wrap and throw it in the fridge. once you're done with this step if you want to make this tomorrow. If you want to make this with me now, you can go ahead and follow the steps along that I'm going to do. And I'm just going to, you know, not let anything go to waste. So a little zucchini Tetris here, get everything to fit. Okay, move that out of the way. So this would be a time I would probably baste. And I take my olive oil and just want to give everything a nice coating to it. I'm going to add some more olive oil here. And this will give a nice little glisten to it. It'll roast really well. Let me grab a little bit more olive oil for that. Here we go. Alexa, stop timer. So the timer for the quinoa just went off. So we'll finish this up and then we will come back to that and we will work on that dish and get all those ingredients together. And so I'm going to sprinkle on the roasted vegetable blend. You either made your own or you were able to find it on Amazon or supermarket. So I am going to go ahead and just sprinkle this over it. This has salt in it, so I am not going to be adding any additional salt. If yours, you made your own and it does not have salt, go ahead and give a little zhuzh of salt to it. And we're going to put this in the oven at 425. If you have a convection oven, you can do 400, 425. If it's non-convection, you can go up to 450 and just keep an eye on it. So I'm going to pass this off so that these can go in the oven. And we are going to take our quinoa, once you get those in the oven, and I'm going to get a bowl to put this in, and pot holders. My pots do not have any, it's all hot. Okay, so now I'm going to take my quinoa and cook it perfectly. If you're using a rice maker to make your quinoa, hopefully it has dinged on you and told you it's time. Okay. We were able to change the color of the quinoa to this really pretty yellow color here. Get through the steam of it, you can see. I'm just going to move my olive oil and my roasted vegetable blend out of the way. My basting brush, which I'm doing, and just letting this fluff a little bit, and I'm going to add my onions to this, the sauteed onions that we made. And we are going to add these in. So, if you are going to enjoy this tomorrow night, here is my recommendation to you for this, is add the onions now, do all of this, but you can hold off on adding the almonds because they will get soft. And the way to reheat this, what I do generally is I will put this in a pan. And I will actually add a little bit more sauteed onion. So I'll saute some onion first and add this to the pan and cook it up that way rather than putting it in the microwave. And it works really well. Okay, so we've got our sauteed onions in here. We have not added any salt to this. So we can go ahead and add a pinch of salt if you would like to this and mix that in. We are going to grab our 1/3 cup of slivered almonds and we're going to toast those, or you can do it tomorrow, totally up to you. I'm going to dry out my pan so that there's no oil in here. And I'm just taking a paper towel. I'm not going to wash it. I'm just going to wipe it out so that it's dry. When you toast nuts and seeds, you generally want to do it in a dry pan. It doesn't need any additional oils, and we're just trying to get that toasty flavor on the outside. So pan is nice and dry. Go ahead and turn on my oven. I'm going to do that on a medium heat. I'm going to add almonds to that. If you have your parsley chopped up, you want to add a little bit here to give it a little bit of green. Parsley, one of our symbols for Passover, a symbol of spring and rebirth. I think we could all use a little bit of that. That gives it some nice color. I happen to be a huge fan of parsley. I actually really like making parsley smoothies with strawberry and mint and water. It's really good. Parsley is super high in vitamin C, and it gives you like that shot of energy at the end of the day.
Debbie, we have a few questions here.
Great.
The first is from Robin. She said, can you please repeat the instructions for cooking the quinoa tomorrow? Do we add the onions now?
Okay, thank you. So you are going to add onions now. Do everything that I've done to prepare your quinoa for tomorrow. So we sauteed the onions, we added it to the quinoa in preparation for tomorrow. You could put this in a pan and just heat it up that way with some olive oil, or you can saute a little bit more onion. If you have some onions chopped up that are left over and just put those in the pan, cook them down the way we did, add this to it and cook it up and heat it up that way. You could do that. Either way is fine. You of course could just put this in the microwave if you wanted to. It's all fun, okay? The idea is that you don't want to be serving it cold. Again, you could take it out just like you'll do with your cauliflower and let it sit at room temperature for a couple hours, heat it back up, and it should be fine. I would, take it out an hour before. Generally, you don't like food sitting out longer than 4 hours. Okay, is there another question, Monica?
Yeah, there's a few more.
Great.
Monica is wondering if we should add the parsley tomorrow, if we're serving tomorrow, along with the almonds.
You could do either one. The parsley is fine to add now or tomorrow. It'll be softer, obviously, tomorrow, but you're going for the color and the flavor, so it'll keep. It's not a problem.
And then Sonia asks, if we don't use all the tahini, how long will it last in the refrigerator?
Good question. In my house, it doesn't last that long, but I would say I'd give it a week to a week and a half after you've made it, and you can taste it and see. Any other questions?
Monica Efrati is asking, how long in the pan and what setting? So I think maybe she's talking about the almonds.
So depending on your pan, I did a medium temp and my almonds are already toasty here, if you can see. So I would do a medium to medium low heat. So mine got nice and toasty. I'm gonna add mine just to be able to see the complete dish. If you add them now and you're gonna eat it tomorrow, it's not the end of the world. They just won't be you won't get the crunch. They're just gonna be soft and there's nothing wrong with that. We're just going for textures.
And then we're also wondering, when we're reheating the quinoa tomorrow, how long in the pan and what setting?
To reheat the quinoa, I would do it on a medium-low temp, and just until, you can give it a taste and see how it is, which is what I'm going to do right now with this, and see how we're doing. Yum, really good. Perfect. I'm honestly not a big fan of quinoa all the time, and so for me, there's something about it that I really like to try and mask a little bit of the flavor with spices, and then I generally really enjoy it. You also, if you have leftovers of this, you could add this to a salad, like with some arugula, raisins, cranberries, cucumbers, and then you've got like a really hearty salad afterwards. You could take some of your chicken soup chicken, shred that up, add that to your salad with arugula and this, and you've got a really yummy, healthy salad for leftovers on the next day.
And Debbie, we have a question from Veronique. She's wondering, can you describe the consistency that the quinoa should be? Should it be wet? Should it be dry?
It should be dry. Mine, I would say no different than rice in the way that it cooks. It should not be wet. It should be dry. And it should not be dry where it's crunchy to the taste. If you did not add enough water and it's a little crunchy, maybe you want to add some more water to it and just let it sit overnight and it'll get absorbed in. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So we're gonna set that aside aside for a sec. And we are going to make our haroset, and then we're going to plate everything together. We have about 8-10 minutes left. So we are going to bring over our dates, our almonds, our raisins, our cinnamon, our ginger, our sweet wine, and honey. Okay, so these are our ingredients. We are making a Sephardic haroset. So I mentioned earlier before we started the class the differences between Sephardic and Ashkenazi, which are just segments of Jewish people depending on where your origins come from, if it's Eastern European or if it's the Middle East, Spain, Morocco, Sephardic. Basically, the food still symbolizes the same thing, but they're using the resources around them when they created these traditions to remember the holiday and the Seder plate. So haroset is one of the symbols on our Seder plate, of course, along with our parsley that I mentioned and a few others. And it's to remind us of the mortar from when we were slaves in Egypt. And so we find things to remind us of that. And so what we are building here is basically the paste. No different than the apples and nuts that we're accustomed to. The same ingredients are usually honey and sweet wine and cinnamon. And there are lots of different variations. This is just one that I have been using for years and is popular in our family tradition. So I took my pitted dates and I minced it up already to look like this. You could chop them up by hand also and have them chopped. I used Nor dates. You could use medjool also. You would have to pit them and take off the stems. Either one is fine. I went for the easy. They were already pitted. I do use the medjool dates for serving for dessert. So the recipe calls for 20 dates. You can add more, of course, if you want to. This is, a recipe that is very lenient in ingredient quantities. I'm going to add my cup of raisins to it. I'm going to add my 2/3 cup of slivered almonds. These are not toasted. You do not need those to be toasted. And I do recommend making this today because all the flavors will marry together really well by tomorrow. You're going to add your 1 to 2 heaping teaspoons of cinnamon. Same with ground garlic. You can add more if you like it with that spicy kick, or you can do less if you're not a big fan of it. We like to kind of kick it up a notch with my husband's like, yeah, more garlic, please, more ginger, please. So we are going for sweet wine. Save the good stuff for the 4 cups. This is for making the haroset, and I believe it calls for a 1/2 cup of wine, and I have a 1/3 cup and a full cup, so I'm going to just go with half of this. And I'm going to pour that in. Same with the honey. I'm going to do a 1/2 cup of honey in here. And you could eyeball it if you want to also. Usually I just eyeball this because now I've got honey in my thing that I'm going to lose. So,
Debbie, we have a question. Someone says, my husband hates raisins. Can I use cranberries instead?
Yes, of course you can use cranberries. You could do apricots. You could do dried cherries. There are, make it your own so that everybody will enjoy it. I just wrote an article actually about, everybody has different food and eating lifestyles. And so trying to find something that is a unifier. And in addition, finding the ingredients that everybody likes, like at the base of the food. But sometimes you're a vegetarian and you're, you've got chicken and, people who are carnivores, and how do you balance all that? And one of the things I always say is it's the spices that are the unifier for bringing all the foods together. So if you have somebody who is a vegetarian, just by using shawarma, they can have that on their cauliflower at the same time that you're making your shawarma chicken, and suddenly everybody's eating like the same kind of meal with just a few variations instead of having to have to do something completely different. And that's what I love about this dish, is this is substantial enough for any vegetarian or vegan, because it's got the quinoa in there as a base. So you've got your protein, your cauliflower is kind of your star, like a cauliflower steak, if you will. You could slice it up. And then you have your veggies, which everybody likes, right? Okay, so here is my Sephardic haroset. It's done. And I will put this in a container afterwards to be able to save for tomorrow, for Seder. David is grabbing a spoon. Oh, here comes the tester. I was like, he's coming towards me. I'm like, what are you doing? Now I know. Cameraman's got to eat too. We passed inspection. I got 2 thumbs up. Okay, so we're good.
Debbie, we have a question. Did you put almonds in the haroset?
I did. I used 2/3 cup slivered almonds. So it had dates, raisins, or another dried fruit of your choice. Alexa, stop timer. Dates, raisins, or some other. It could be apricots, cherries, cranberries. And I added the cinnamon, the ginger, the slivered almonds, Manischewitz sweet wine, and honey. Okay, so that is done. I'm going to move that aside. And my husband is saying he needs some pot holders. He wants to take out the cauliflower. He's checking it. You can go ahead and check your cauliflower and see how it's doing.
We have a couple questions here. Myra's wondering if we can use walnuts in the haroset instead.
You can use walnuts if you have a nut allergy. Dave, why don't you go ahead and pull it out and I'll show it to people. You can use walnuts. It's going to change the texture and the flavor. You could do pecans if you wanted to. You could do pistachios. It's going to taste, walnuts have a different texture to them. So there's no reason why you can't. It's just going to taste different.
And then Robin was wondering if we're supposed to leave the cauliflower in at 500 for the whole baking time. Yes.
Here's my cauliflower. I'm going to show you it's not done yet. You can see it's starting to get charred, but it needs more time. So I'm going to show you what it can look like when it's done. So I'm going to put mine back in the oven. I just wanted to show you why I think it's not done, because it's not as charred. I'm going to show you the one that I made earlier of what it could look like, and not to worry because it's not burnt. It's really good. So I'm going to pass that back, and I'm going to pull over. This is my serving plate that I would use for this tomorrow, just so you see how I'm going to plate everything. So that is going to be the next stage of what we're doing, is starting to plate as things are done. If you are not serving this today, and you want to save it for tomorrow, do not do what I'm doing right now. Save it for tomorrow. I just want to be able to show you what I'm doing. So that way you understand all the steps to it. My vegetables look like they're almost done. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, and I'm going to pull over the cauliflower for you to be able to see it. And I'm going to lift it up because it's not hot. I made it earlier. So look how charred that is. Super charred, right? And it looks really pretty. And I'm going to cut it open so you can see what it looks like on the inside too, because you see the yellow going through. But not yet. I am going to take the base of my quinoa, and I'm going to put this at the bottom of my plate. I'm just going to build a nice big well for it. Okay, and spread that all out. If you want to make a hole in the middle, you can, or you can leave it with the quinoa. And I'm going to put my whole cauliflower here in the middle. And we're going to pull out the roasted vegetables so that we can put those on the plate. So that's the cue to cameraman to please pull out vegetables.
Debbie, we have a question about the haroset in the meantime.
Yes.
Someone says, I've put too much ginger in my haroset. It's spicy. Is that normal? If not, how can I correct it?
There's never too much ginger in our house, but if you want to correct it, you can add more honey and wine to modify it. You could also add some more dates and raisins if it's too spicy for you, and just add more ingredients to balance it out. So it takes that bite away. Okay. So vegetables, I'm gonna start to plate around. You can see here, I'm just taking my peppers and I'm gonna put them around the dish. You could let these get more charred too if you wanted, but just wanted to be sensitive for time. Okay, so you can see how pretty this is starting to look and the pops of color. And then I'm gonna add my zucchini around. You can, it's a little hot, but you could, you know, keep going with that. And boom. Okay, so I'm gonna hold this up so you can start to see how pretty the dish is coming together. So you just wanna plate it around like that so it's one cohesive dish. There are 3 separate recipes that stand on their own, but you can build one dish all together just like this. Okay? We good? Everybody with me? All right, it sounds like we are, no questions. Okay, so the last piece, if you're using tahini and you do use kitniyot, I'm gonna take some of this thick tahini and I'm gonna add some to a bowl to thin it out a little. So I'm gonna take a couple spoons, because I don't want all of it to be, for our household, we don't want all of it to be so thick. I'm gonna, because I want to drizzle this on top, but I want to save that for dipping with matzah or other things, veggies. You can, you know, enjoy it as a dip. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to loosen it up. And I'm mixing it to get a tahini sauce, okay? So you can see here, coming in, okay? And I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna drizzle over it all around. And I mentioned earlier, I have a few favorite things I like to put in this. One of them is Israeli pickles. Don't judge, it's really, really good together. It pairs really well. Okay, and some parsley. So I'm gonna take my pickles. If you've never heard of Israeli pickles, you can find them in the kosher aisle in most supermarkets. If you do know what kosher pickles are, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, somebody asked earlier, can you use regular pickles? And I don't know how dill pickles would go with this. So I'm trying to envision the flavor and I'm a little iffy on it. So maybe. Okay, I'm gonna take some parsley and sprinkle that on top. And if you were able to procure some pomegranate seeds, they're a little off season. My tree is starting to just bloom, but sometimes you can find them pre-seeded right now, and you can put those on top. You've got a really beautiful, cohesive dish, a winner for a vegetarian or for anybody to be able to enjoy. And I'm gonna hold that up so that you're able to see it. Look how pretty that is. And this year, whoever is joining you at your home Seder will be able to enjoy it. And if you're with people virtually, they will be able to enjoy it. I'm gonna pull back my haroset here so that, you know, I would put this in a really pretty serving dish to be able to put out. So that way we'll start to clear away everything. I hope all of you have had a really nice opportunity to be able to come together and cook during this really difficult and unprecedented time, that we can find a space to be able to still be together, even if it's not in person, but to be able to recognize that we still have sacred times and moments in our daily lives, whether it's Shabbat every week or preparing for Passover. This really helps to anchor us and remind us, you know, values and what's important, and to be able to be together. So thank you for coming into my kitchen. Thank you for letting me come and visit your kitchen. I really enjoyed this time together. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer that now. But we are just a little past 1:30 and want to be respectful of everybody's time and day for getting ready for Seder or whatever else you may have going on. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Debbie. We have 2 questions to wrap it up. Sonia's asking, when she cuts into the cauliflower, can she expect it to fall into pieces, or should she be cutting it into steaks?
You can cut it into steaks. I'll cut mine open. Thanks for reminding me that. I'm going to grab a knife. And so you could slice it like this if you wanted to, or you could break it up into florets. But you can see the color there. It's really nice.
And then our other question is, someone chopped dates for the veggie recipe. She's wondering when we're using those, if we're using those.
Oh, they can go into the quinoa. I believe the dates were for the quinoa, actually. Thank you for mentioning that. I missed that. Oh, yeah. So the dates can also go in here into and around the quinoa. So thank you for asking that. Any other questions? Well, if anybody's finishing up, I'll just take a moment and share this. I've had this for quite some time. It is a JNF tree certificate that was given to my great-grandmother in the 1950s after my great-grandfather passed away. And it is from the Ethical Reading Group in memory of my great-grandfather, Julius Ryman. And I just love this. And I've had this in my home for years. And it's always brought me so much meaning to know that JNF has been a part of so many lives for generations. And this is proudly in our living room, juxtaposed to some of my other tree certificates, just to see the generational continuum of how JNF is so relevant no matter what year we are in. It plays such an important role in our lives and does such amazing work in Israel so that we can be a strong people.
Thank you, Debbie. We have our very last question. Melissa is wondering if we can char the cauliflower more. She says that she had a charred cauliflower in Israel and is wondering if this is a similar recipe.
Yes, you can absolutely do that. You can see this one is pretty charred already, and I let it go for a long time. The one I came out, I showed you was not charred enough, so I wanted to put it back in the oven. But in the interest of time, I made one in advance just to be able to show you what it should look like. This was an ambitious menu to do in an hour, so I really tried to be able to break it down in steps so that you could get through everything. And even if your cauliflower is still cooking, you should have the elements to your dish that you will be able to serve tomorrow. So you've got everything ready to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Debbie. This was an absolute pleasure. I'm looking at all the faces on Zoom. It looks like everyone had a blast. I don't know about you guys. I'm so hungry. That one, Debbie, in your kitchen looks so good. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. I wish everyone here a very happy Passover. And if you enjoyed this, you'll enjoy our other upcoming JNF programs. You can check jnf.org/on-demand. And our next program will be Shabbat Service this Friday, April 10th, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can find that listing on jnf.org/on-demand. Thank you again, Debbie, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Debbie.
you.
Everybody.
Thank you. I would just
Thank you so much, Debbie, on all of our behalf. Shari, I love you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Love
Thank you.
all.
And
thank you so much.
thank you. If you want to find out more cooking classes, you can always go to spiceitupwithdeb.com. I have a calendar of events, and we can continue cooking together. And wish everyone a Pesach Sameach, a very happy, healthy Passover.
Thank you for doing this for us.